People coming in and creating fictions about this that doesn't exist. Where's the videotape of an Epstein Island of X, Y, and Z committing these frauds? Why haven't you given it to us? Do you really think I wouldn't give that to you if it existed? I'm working my ass off, along with the leadership at the Bureau and DOJ, to get you what we're allowed to give you. And you're going to get the video of the cell, and you're going to see for yourself. And we will never be able to convince everyone.
But we were told that the cameras were down.
Well, I don't know who said that.
But that was in the news.
We're giving you all the footage we have.
So why wasn't that released like immediately? Why did this speculation escalate?
I think you'd have to ask whoever the Attorney General back then was, Bill Barr.
Hello, welcome back to the No Way Jose podcast. I am your host, Jose Galison. Today, we are joined again by the great Nick Bryant. It's been a long time since we've had him on the show. Actually, I think the last time, the only other time we had him on, I believe, was on Already Dead, our call-in show. So now it's just me and him, a little bit more of a different format, and I think it calls for it given what's going on in the current zeitgeist. I've been covering it more than enough on my show. I am absolutely disgusted. I think this is the death nail of the Trump administration. Not that I really care for them much to begin with, but this is the moment, and there is no better person to have on to talk about it. Someone I consider a hero. Without much more ado, let's go ahead and bring Nick in here. Hey, what's up, Nick? It's a pleasure to have you back on the show. Good to see you.
Hey, Jose. Glad to be back on the show.
Yeah, glad to have you back. Just for the purpose, I know most of my audience knows who you are, but you never know when you get the odd a onesie twosie new person to the audience, or they're not familiar with the things that I'm familiar with. Could you let our audience know who you are, and at least particularly for the purposes of today's discussion, why you are a significant figure? You do play into the parlance that is Epstein, although you definitely aren't only contained to that. You've written extensively on the Franklin scandal, the Watergate scandal, and numerous other things. I haven't read your Watergate book. I think that's the only one of your books I haven't read, but for the most part, I've read all of your other stuff. You do have great work, and you are a great agent for truth, I think. So, but if you could let my audience know, just kind of fill in the blanks for them, I'd appreciate that.
I've been a journalist for 35 years. I was in academia for 5 years prior to that. And I moved to New York City in 1995. And I moved here and I just committed myself to being a freelance journalist writer. And in 2002, I started to investigate a pedophile network that flew kids from coast to coast, that was hooked up to intelligence, that deployed blackmail. And what we're seeing today is Epstein is kind of a carbon copy of that. The book was called The Franklin Scandal, a story of power brokers, child abuse, and betrayal. And in that pedophile network, we saw tremendous malfeasance by the state of Nebraska and also by the federal government, as we saw tremendous malfeasance by the state of Florida and by the federal government in the Epstein case. And the Franklin, I spent 7 years on the Franklin scandal. I really wanted to prove its existence, and I had a very high bar for that. And I live in New York City, which is the mecca of publishing, and I felt if I had enough proof, I really felt this, that I could get a book published on it. And I gave the book proposal to my agent, and then my agent unceremoniously jettisoned me a couple of weeks later. And then I gave the book proposal to another agent who's very good, and he really did try to sell it, but all the doors were slammed. And that was published 2009, 2010. And that 7-year investigation had taken a lot out of me. To go as far into a child trafficking network as I had gone, and just the unremitting darkness, it takes a toll on your soul. But I started reading about Epstein in 2012, and that he was getting massages from all these underage girls, and that a grand jury in Florida had declared that he hadn't molested a single underage girl. And that's exactly what happened in the Franklin scandal. 2 grand juries declared that no children had been molested, even though scores of children had been molested. And I don't know if your audience is familiar with the machinations of a grand jury, but a special prosecutor is chosen to oversee a grand jury, and he or she calls the witnesses that the grand jurors listen to, and he or she presents evidence to the grand jurors. And the grand jurors are just people that have shown up for jury duty and been funneled to a grand jury. So a special prosecutor is in a unique position to twist the minds of the grand jurors. And actually, there was a New York Supreme Court justice who said that special prosecutors of grand juries have so much power over grand jurors that they could get them to indict a ham sandwich. And so I was reading about Jeffrey Epstein molesting all these girls, and then I was also saw that a grand jury declared that he hadn't molested a single child. And that reminded me very much of the Franklin scandal. And although I was somewhat depleted, in a lot of different ways, I went down to Florida and I did what I do. I start knocking on doors and start talking to people. And I ultimately got Epstein's Black Book on my first trip to Florida. And then I came back to New York, and I thought for sure I could sell a story on the Black Book. I mean, I didn't think that would be a problem. So I was meeting with editors, and when I was meeting with editors and publishers for the Franklin scandal, I could see the wheels go around. I could see that they were thinking to themselves.
I do have to, real quick, not to cut off your flow, I do have to muse how funny it is now. I mean, maybe not funny, maybe it's the wrong word. Looking back now, how essentially this bombshell story that it was just kind of like you were struggling to get it published. I just think there's maybe a note for people there, and there's always this sometimes when conspiratorial thinking comes in, people go, oh, well, if this was a thing, then this would happen. You know, this would totally be in the media or whatever. So sorry, but I just had to note that. So go on.
That is noted. So I came back to New York, and I was talking to editors, I was talking to publishers, and I could see the cognitive dissonance emerge before my very eyes. They were thinking to themselves, this is really a horrible story, and all these children have been molested. We need to help Nick Bryant. Or I can write Nick Bryant off as crazy right now, and I don't have to worry about this anymore, and I can have a nice meal with my family tonight. So that's what happened when I was pitching the Franklin scandal, and that's what happened when I was pitching the Epstein scandal, even after I had acquired the Black Book. So I went to just about every publisher that I could and attempted to sell the Black Book and an article on the Black Book. And finally, Gawker published the Black Book, and by that time I had flight logs too. So I was the first guy to put the Black Book up, and also the first guy to put the flight logs up. And then once Gawker took a chance with the Black Book, then the floodgates opened. Tons of ink were dumped, have been dumped on stories about the Black Book and the Passenger Manifest for that matter. But the mainstream media just won't let me in. They will not let me in. I've been on lots of big podcasts, but the mainstream media just will not let Nick Bryant in to explain the Epstein scandal. And that's been kind of frustrating to me.
Absolutely. And you have, I mean, you've been this, hey, you've been putting out good work for a long period of time. You really are a great example, I think, of time preference and how it could possibly pay off in the long run. Because you've been slogging along, and now you, in my opinion, are going to go on later to be, you know, one of the greatest journalists of our time. Because you were one of the people that you know, were on this. But I don't know, you don't always get rewarded with all the things with it immediately. Sometimes you have to defer gratitude and just kind of follow your own individual moral compass.
Well, I hope if I do, if this does jettison me, into space. I hope it's not posthumously.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how we all hope. We all hope for greatness, and that it's not posthumously. It's like, make sure you include that asterisk when you rub the genie lamp for that one. But I mean, sometimes it's just the way the cookie crumbles, and I don't know. I think it says something about a man. But there's definitely you're an interesting character at this point in time. This story has flourished into something far more than I thought it would. This is the cynic in me has always thought this was going to somehow, some way, some shape, some form get buried like every other scandal. But I don't know. I don't know if I don't know if it's just the dynamic of the Trump, the thing that is Trump, the vibe, the what carried him through his 2016 administration with these like bombastic type claims and this way he kind of out chads people, I guess. If perhaps maybe he overasserted and he thought he could literally take this up into including things like pedophilia. I don't know, but I think common people take that and they go, no, I don't know. This is kind of where we draw the line. Maybe we'll let you be bombastic about this or that, but there is a certain line, and they found it. And they have been, the entire administration, it seems like there was at least flirting. That is a subtle way to put it. Flirting with truth for Epstein, the Epstein files, the Epstein list. Then now we have seen nothing but an entire kind of a whiplash of a 180 since they've been in power. And I mean, the only thing I can think is maybe they just thought that they could just kind of hand wave it away, fake news, and move on. But I think this might just be a bridge too far. And as I said in my intro, I think this will be the death knell of this administration. I do not see how they weather this. I mean, they have kind of masterfully, if you want to attribute motive or that this is somehow being controlled. I mean, hell, we've had now we're at the government shutdown. We had the recess, and we had the Charlie Kirk shooting that just almost perfectly sent from above from God, kind of delayed the inevitable, the calling that is the truth of the Epstein. Now, do I think we're going to get the truth? No, I don't know how this is going to manifest itself. I just think it's the death of the administration. But we're in this unique time where we have multiple different forms of bureaucracy that seem to be working for truth. We were talking beforehand, so actually the question I'm kind of driving at here is I'd like to know, I guess if you want to give some comments, but also what legal avenues are there right now? Because I think, I know I run a daily show and I cover this stuff regularly, particularly Epstein. Even I have a vague, I know we have the discharge petition, which was, I don't even understand the specifics exactly. I know then that goes to Congress, and then that goes to the Senate, and then I forget exactly. We also have the subpoenas with the Democrat Oversight Committee. I don't know if there's maybe a more more manageable way for normal people to understand what the hell is even going on with all the different, gaggle of things going on here. And I guess, I don't know, I'll leave it at that. I've thrown enough at you already, but just, I was thinking about that just kind of to make it more understandable for people. Yeah.
Some of the things that you said with Epstein, we already know the truth. Mm-hmm. I mean, we really do. We know that Epstein was involved with intelligence. We know that there was blackmail involved. We know who many of the pimps are. And the New York Times did an article on 6 of the pimps. Ghislaine Maxwell was one pimp. Sarah Kellen was another. Leslie Groff was another. Adriana Ross was another. Nadia Marcinkova and Haley Robson. Haley Robson was primarily used to get girls from the high school and middle school that she attended. But the other 5, Maxwell, Kellen, Groff, Ross, and Marcinkova, they were fully cognizant of that entire network. And if we really wanted justice, we could go after them. And the child trafficking in the federal system is a heavy sentence, and it's 15 to life. And we could slap them with multiple counts of child trafficking, unlike we did with Ghislaine. We only slapped her with 1. And then they would roll on the perps. And there are hundreds of Epstein victims that would be willing to testify if they felt safe. So we already know the truth, and we already know who a bunch of the perpetrators are. And they've been kicked around quite a bit in the media. People in the media haven't outright said they're perpetrators, but we know who they are. So that we know the truth of Epstein at this point. We know the truth. With the Trump administration, Epstein is like a Pandora's box. In Greek mythology, Pandora was the first woman, and she was given a box and she was told not to open it because a curse that would curse humanity would come out of the box. So the Bush administration, the Bush II administration, constructed the box. They were the first ones that covered up Epstein. Then Obama, Biden, and then the first Trump administration, they didn't touch the box. But I believe that Trump thought that he could open up the box a little bit and then slam it shut. But once you open the box, you let the curse out. And Trump has let the curse out. And I fully believe that Pam Bondi in February, when she said, we're going to release the Epstein files, she gave us a nothing sandwich. And actually, the black book that we published with Gawker, we redacted the names of the adults, and then under massage is kind of a euphemism for underage girls, or a number of them were underage, and there's 175, and many of them were underage girls. So we, with all that information, it's come out, but the black book that Pam Bondi released had everybody's name redacted and everybody's number redacted. I released more incriminating information on Jeffrey Epstein's network in 2015 than Pam Bondi did in 2025. And I truly think that the Trump administration thought that it could give us something that was highly diluted and think that we would settle for that. I mean, I don't think the Trump administration really understood that people really want to get to the bottom of this story. And actually, a lot of Americans are very cognizant of many of the facets of this story. So, and then Pam Bondi said that she had been bamboozled by the FBI field office, that they'd given her incorrect information, and she blamed it all on them. And then she said that she had a truckload of evidence and that they were vetting it at the FBI and the Department of Justice. And she said only matters of national security will be redacted. So she keeps digging herself in a deeper hole. Now she's got to tell us what a bunch of child molesters have to do with matters of national security. And just the whole lie, all that stuff was taken from Epstein. The 300 gigabytes, or how many gigabytes, they were taken from Epstein. And when Epstein was arrested in 2019, I mean, the FBI was sawing his safe open as soon as it possibly could. And according to the New York Times, there were hundreds, if not thousands, of discs, and there were underage girls. And according to Business Insider, there were hard drives. And Pam Bondi wants us to believe that the FBI and Department of Justice just started to look at all that material within the last 6 months. I'm willing to bet everything that I have that FBI and DOJ and probably a number of other alphabet organizations, they were looking at that Jeffrey Epstein material that night, and then the next day, and then the next night. They probably got triple overtime. So that's a huge lie. And then that July 6th document came out and said that there was 300 gigabytes of information that was taken from Epstein's possessions, and that there are over 1,000 victims. And I agree with that. But then it said that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell acted alone Now, and according to Pam Bondi, that a lot of that child abuse material had Jeffrey Epstein abusing children. So, and now Kash Patel is testified before the House and the Senate, and he's saying that there's no other co-conspirators. Everything is in utter contradiction to what Pam Bondi has already said. And the administration just keeps digging itself deeper and deeper and deeper into an abyss of lies.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, I agree with that assessment. Now I would just kind of, maybe I'm missing some things, but what specific vectors of attack, bureaucratically speaking, are we seeing currently? Because like I mentioned, we have, I believe, the Democratic Oversight Committee, which well, I'm sure, I mean, if you want to, we can break off into that, the recent news there. But we have obviously the discharge, and then some of the subpoenas through which we got the birthday book information recently, which was kind of a huge revelation. Although oddly, I know, like, talking to normal people in my life, some normal people weren't even aware of it. And I think it probably had a lot to do with the fact that the Charlie Kirk thing happened within probably 48 hours or so, I believe, after the drop of it. So I think it kind of, most normal people missed that piece of information. But for the people looking into it, that was a pretty big deal. And we'll probably have to carve out a moment to talk about that as well. But what specific avenues do we have out there? Obviously, I know you have Epstein Justice as well, too. So if you want to take a moment to talk about that, that would make sense. But so far as, like, what actual, vectors of attack are we seeing right now? And I also just kind of, what are your thoughts about them in general? Because obviously some of these things are being treated like they're going to be like the silver bullets, but I don't really think any of them are. But your thoughts?
Mike Johnson is the Speaker of the House. Constitutionally, he's the third most powerful man in the country. A former Speaker of the House, actually the longest reigning Republican Speaker of the House, was Dennis Hastert, who was a pedophile and actually had to do some time because someone was extorting him because Dennis Hastert had preyed on him when Dennis Hastert was a high school teacher. But we've got another freak as the Speaker of the House. And when I found this out, I thought it was kind of mind-boggling. He has an app on his phone called Covenant Eye. And his 17-year-old son has an app on his phone called Covenant Eye. And that gives them the ability to monitor each other's consumption of pornography. So
do you know for sure it goes both ways? Because I've heard you speak about this elsewhere. Because it's so, for one, it's gross either way it's going, frankly. I mean, I'm a father, and I don't know. I just wouldn't want to know that. But I don't know. I guess I could kind of wrap my head around it, at least from the father to the son. But I mean, that's still, even wrapping my head around it, it's still disgusting. So I don't know. I'm just curious where you got that tidbit of info from. And if you are for sure, it literally both father and son can track the others. That is beyond bizarre.
Actually, it was broken by Rolling Stone, I believe, but it's been published in a number of mainstream publications. And him adjourning the House early so it couldn't vote on Massey's discharge petition was extremely egregious. Here is a guy that's doing everything he possibly can to make sure that there isn't an investigation into Donald Trump. He wants to keep it so there's no wild cards. And there's been subpoenas to a number of people that were part of this cover up, including Bill and Hillary Clinton. But the first one subpoenaed, I believe, was Alexander Acosta. And he was the U.S. attorney for Southern Florida that gave Epstein his sweetheart deal. And Alexander Acosta testified that it wasn't that the deal that they gave Epstein was, a standard deal, and there wasn't anything spectacular about it. But here's the thing about that: Acosta was the Department of Justice was aware of at least 40 underage Epstein victims. I've got a list of 36, but they were aware of at least 40. And I've got emails between the assistant U.S. attorney Emery Villafana and Epstein's attorneys. And it's very obvious that they're colluding together to make sure that Epstein gets his sweetheart deal. And the sweetheart deal was such a sweetheart deal that the Department of Justice, once it made the deal with Epstein, it sealed it. And it was in direct violation of the Crime Victims' Rights Act, because according to that, it's a piece of federal legislation. Victims of crimes have to be apprised of the adjudication of their perpetrators, and they get feedback on whether they feel, whether the sentences of the perpetrators are reasonable, and they also get to confront the perpetrators. But the Department of Justice contravened all of that and sealed it. And there was a federal judge in Palm Beach, Kenneth Mara, who was a good guy, and he decided that it should be unsealed. And the Department of Justice appealed that, and then the 11th Circuit ultimately said that the document should be unsealed. And what that document was, it was called a non-prosecution agreement, and it gave all of Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators blanket immunity. I mean, just stunning. And so Alexander Acosta is telling us that that's just a status quo kind of deal that he made with Epstein. I mean, he's lying his ass off. Now, according to another report, Acosta was told that Epstein was intelligence and that he had to back off. And he has retracted that. But think about this. Epstein's running an international pedophile network. Is a U.S. attorney going to go out on a limb and cover up a nationwide pedophile network without being ordered to by his boss? And there's only two people in the country that can tell a U.S. attorney to stand down. One is Alberto Gonzales. The other one, at that time, the attorney general was Alberto Gonzales, and the president was Bush II. So Alexander Acosta is not going to go out on a limb like that and cover up a nationwide or international pedophile network unless he's told. And Alberto Gonzales, the attorney general, he's not going to go out on a limb and cover up a nationwide or international pedophile network unless he's ordered to. So it's very obvious to me that President George W. Bush was the one that ordered that cover-up. That's what I believe. I've believed that for a very long time. So Acosta was lying when he testified before the House.
By that very same logic, I think we can kind of come to a very similar conclusion, but for today's purposes. You mentioned George W. Bush, kind of the way certain people are behaving, like only certain things being explainable for such things. You brought up that Acosta, with his recent meeting with the Democratic Oversight Committee, kind of his, we decided that wasn't worthwhile looking into, despite the fact I didn't actually, look over any of these individual witnesses, whatever. But the same thing is, I think it's interesting to note, and it was actually Tara Palmieri, I think, who made this connection first, and so it wasn't anything of mine. I don't know how it's used. Kind of a 2 + 2. It's not like a great revelation. But that's the same thing Cash recently did in his recent ordeal going through the gauntlet of congressmen, is he did the same thing. And we have this rolling Rolodex of characters. We have the Bondi, we have the Bongino, we have Cash, hell, we have Acosta, we have Barr. But hey, you kind of named one of the top dogs, but he's not the top dog anymore. At the end of the day, it's kind of like, it seems like all signs point like this is coming from the tippy top, that shut it down. I don't care what it takes. We will make anything, whatever, up to and including multiple people being willing to, in the most obvious ways, lie to the American public about one of the most despicable things you possibly could lie to. Like, to the fact that it's like, I don't know, It's like if found we're like at like Nuremberg level. Like what if you are somehow like against, like what are you doing? If you're a mouthpiece is somehow covering for this in any way, shape, or form, it's frankly insanity. And this is like pitchfork type territory for the American public, I think. So
what we're seeing is the government protecting a system of politics. I mean, certain individuals are definitely being protected, but it's the same thing with the Franklin scandal. What the primary thing that's being protected is a political system that's rife with blackmail. That, I believe, is what is being protected. I mean, there are definitely individuals being protected. Mike Johnson might even be one of them, even though his name hasn't come up yet in my investigations. But our political system has been rife with blackmail for a long time. And I talk about it in the Franklin scandal. I wrote a book, I co-authored a book called Confessions of a DC Madam, The Politics of Sex, Lies, and Blackmail, about Henry Vincent. And he ran a gay escort service in Washington, DC, actually the largest gay escort service that's ever been uncovered. And he provided escorts to CIA assets who would use the escorts to blackmail closeted politicians. And I also wrote a book called The Truth About Watergate, a tale of incredible lies and liars. And at the heart of that, and I can't believe that it's been covered up all these years, at the heart of Watergate is a CIA blackmail operation. So, and I've come across other CIA blackmail operations in Washington, D.C. And that is the problem right there. Trump, I don't know if Trump is compromised, and I don't know if people in his family or people close to him are compromised, but Trump is definitely protecting a political system that has really shortchanged Americans for many, many years in so many different areas.
Speaking of compromise, we'd be remiss if we didn't take a moment to discuss the Epstein birthday books. And frankly, I mean, you say, I'll be completely honest with you. I'll admit that I don't have sound evidence, but I said many times in my show, the past, I don't know, handful of months have made me reassess previous information from the past, re-look at things with fresh eyes. Not that I was ever some Trump guy, but I think this dude did some stuff, some dark stuff. But there's maybe not. But the point being is, with this, the birthday book, if we are to believe that this is in any way credible, at the very least, I mean, perhaps we can't say what exact untoward things were done, but I think any logical person should be able to walk away from this and realize this group of people, degeneracy, borderline evil, is basically ubiquitous with this clique. Just kind of the way
I don't think we would call it borderline evil when you're destroying the lives of little girls.
Yes.
I mean, that's,
well,
and some of them are very, very young, much younger than the 14-year-old.
Well, I was referring to the book, and some of it's kind of vague in what it is, but it's definitely heavily alluding to something sinister, something else. So I just kind of want to get your thoughts on that. I mean, wherever you want to take it, but just the idea that dropped. I mean, I was already thinking some pretty rough stuff about the president at that time, and then that dropped, and I'm not gonna lie, it was one of those things where I was already thought things were pretty bad, but that was, holy moly, like you see Bill Clinton being the tame individual in that book, and you think, oh wow, this took a very dark turn, and I'm someone who already thinks the elites are doing some crazy stuff, and this was okay. I guess I'm cooking with fire here. So I know your thoughts on the birthday book. It's just nuts to me. I mean, I don't really know what commentary there is to say other than that. So
I'm at a loss of words for the birthday book. As I said, I think it alludes to some major evil. And it seems from the birthday book that there's some kind of gusto involved in molesting young girls. And I believe that that's evil.
Yeah, I agree. I just the way it's done cryptically is what I was trying to allude to. That it's not overtly, like, I mean, it's basically overt for anyone with a thinking brain, but it's like in such a way that if you brought it to the court of law, you could probably argue that it wasn't. So, it's definitely evil. But just to be fair, all right. And then I think this also, like another thing is, with the compromise question, and then also this ties into the Acosta deal. We've had this Ghislaine pardon concept kind of sitting in the wing. I mean, do you think? I mean, obviously, I don't know if you have any sort of inside information, but I really don't think it's outside the realm of possibilities with everything we're seeing. I think it's frankly pretty likely. They seem to be leaning up to and including, legally speaking, everything so far as the official narrative. And so, if they didn't do nothing, then obviously that's saying that, hey, the government messed up, and they should also honor their word from before, theoretically, by this line of logic, and they should pardon her. Obviously, I don't believe that line of logic. But any thoughts that you find substantive on just kind of the prospects of a Ghislaine? I mean, I know she also got her prison changed to be something far more amenable than what she was dealing with before. Hell, I think there was even a woman who got kicked out of there for complaining about it, kicked out of that nice jail. So she's being treated with kid gloves, despite the fact that she, like I think you said, what was it, 40 some odd people in that trial, ruined the lives of young girls. Just any thoughts on the
people
pardon?
that the feds know about, but
Yeah.
there's hundreds of girls that have been destroyed by those people. With Ghislaine Maxwell, the Supreme Court is deciding now whether or not it's going to hear her case. And our Supreme Court, I think, is very compromised. I've written about Clarence Thomas. People can go to my nickbryantnyc.com, and I've got a long blog about Clarence Thomas and how he is a freak and how he is compromised. So I don't know what kind of adjudication is going to go down with Ghislaine Maxwell in the Supreme Court, but it's kind of interesting because her lawyers have held off on presenting her case to the Supreme Court. And the argument that they're making is that the deal that was made with the Southern District that gave all of Epstein's co-conspirators immunity applies to every district. And that is generally the case. Like if a mafia turncoat gets immunity in the Southern District of New York, they generally have immunity for the rest of the country. When Epstein was arrested in 2019, the feds said that they didn't have to, because he was arrested in the New York Southern District, that the feds didn't have to adhere to what had gone down in the Southern District of Florida. And that was the rationale that they used to put Ghislaine Maxwell away. I hate to say this, but Ghislaine Maxwell has a good case. I mean, she has a fairly solid case if you look at other people that have been granted immunity. But I really hope she doesn't get immunity. And before she was put in this Cush prison, she was cycled into dormitory living in that prison in Florida really quickly. And dormitory living is more or less safe for people that have done time, that are getting that have been exemplary prisoners and are getting ready to be released. But she leapfrogged over a lot of people and ended up in dormitory living. So she, even before this strange interview that she gave one of the Trump Department of Justice people, she'd already been given preferable treatment.
Yeah, Bertod Blanche. Yeah. All right. Today we experienced the first day of the government shutdown, and now we mentioned earlier the recess they took, where everybody ran back to Israel, and then before they could vote on the discharge paperwork. Now we have this government shutdown that seemingly is delaying, and now we're the earliest we're going to see maybe mid-October. What are your also? I do think it was meaningful. I think there were quotes at the time for the recess that there were people saying that they were actually. I think it might even been Mike Johnson or others that were straight up said the Epstein thing is why they were doing that. I mean, I could go find that later. I don't think we've seen any from this one. I think there's a little bit more at the heart of it. So I just want to know your thoughts. Have you heard anything that does seem to imply this could be the case? It's hard not to notice it, at least, that it's going to affect it. And then just kind of your thoughts on how this will affect the narrative going forward, if at all, or your thoughts on that.
Well, the discharge petition that Massey and Khanna have introduced requires a majority in the House, and they have 217 votes. They need 218 votes. There was a election in Arizona about a week ago, and Adelita Rojava was elected to the House of Representatives, and she is absolutely going to sign. So there will be 218 signatures. And Mike Johnson doesn't want this to go down. It's very obvious that he's doing everything he can to make sure that there isn't a discharge petition vote. But here's the thing about that. Even if you get 218 votes in the House, it has to go to the Senate. And the Senate Majority Leader has to decide that it's going to be voted on. And then it needs a majority in the Senate. And Senator Chuck Schumer from New York put a rider into a defense bill that mandated an release of the Epstein files and also an Epstein investigation. And it was defeated 51-49. So the discharge position would have to, it's called House Resolution 581 now. And if it's voted on and there's a majority, then it would become, then it would actually be introduced as a bill 185. And if that got a majority, then it would go, as I said, it would go to the Senate. But the Senate has recently voted within the last 2 or 3 weeks on whether or not they feel it's germane to release the Epstein files and an Epstein investigation. And 51 senators voted against that. So we've got it. And we've got 217 representatives and 51 senators that have voted against children that have been molested getting any kind of justice, which really shows how sick and appalling our system is. But then if it makes it through the House and it makes it through the Senate, then it has to be signed into law by Donald Trump. So I really laud the efforts of Massey and Khanna. I mean, I really do laud their efforts, but that is not the way to go. I've got an organization, it's called Epstein Justice. And what we want is an independent congressional commission to look into the Epstein case. And an independent congressional commission can actually have been used where Congress just doesn't want to deal with something, and they give it to an independent commission to look into. And independent commissions have really uncovered some amazing stuff. And what we would require, and when we first proposed this at Epstein Justice, people thought, our detractors thought we were deluded, because it's going to require a majority in the House and a majority in the Senate, and it doesn't require the presidential signature at all. But we're fairly close to a majority in the House, and we're fairly close to a majority in the Senate. I don't know. I'm sure markers would be called in, and people that are compromised would definitely vote it down. I mean, it would be a real battle. But at Epstein Justice, this is a grassroots movement. And Lisa Murkowski, Tara Palmieri wrote an article about Lisa Murkowski, who is a senator from Alaska. And it discussed how Murkowski's husband had a business relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell, and how it was a conflict of interest of hers to vote against releasing the Epstein files and an Epstein investigation in the Senate. And we sent out this week, we have a federal legislator of the week, and we sent out about 80,000. We sent a flyer that has a picture of Lisa Murkowski and also the number to call. And we sent that flyer to 80,000 people this week. And we're hoping that other people will, disseminate it amongst their friends. And that's how we're going to win. Mm-hmm. We're not going to win. I really believe that we're not going to win with this discharge petition because there's just too many ways that it can go wrong. Well, how we're going to win is an independent congressional commission, and that's going to require Americans to put a tremendous amount of heat on their legislators. But I believe that we can do it. It's our country. It is our country. And we have collectively decided as Americans that we don't want children being molested with impunity. There was a CBS poll that found 89% of Americans wanted full transparency with Epstein. I don't know what's up with that other 11%, but 89% of Americans. So Mike Johnson and the 217 House representatives and the 51 senators, they are voting against the American will. And we've experienced that a number of times where Obama, the Americans wanted a single payer healthcare system, and Obama had the House and he had the Senate, and we could have had a single payer health system, but they gave us a lot of bullshit on why they couldn't get it through, which is very troubling. So we've got, and the perpetual wars in the Middle East, 80% of Americans wanted out of those wars years ago, but our leaders didn't care. They just kept pumping money and armaments into the Middle East. So this is an opportunity for Americans to reclaim their country. And it's about children being molested. And according to the Centers for Disease Control, 25% of underage girls and 5% of underage boys in the US have been molested. And people in the field think it's slightly conservative for underage girls and very conservative for underage boys. There was a study that found 16%. That's probably too high. But if you just go with the CDC numbers, you've got over 50 million Americans that have been molested as children. And and the vast majority of them will never see justice. But if we allow the Department of Justice to be unresponsive to victims in the Epstein case, a proven trafficking case, that sends a message to millions of victims that they've got no hope or any chance for justice. So that's another level why this is so important. It's all the victims of sexual abuse in this country need to see this work so they think that they can at one point have a voice. Many of them have just relinquished trying to have a voice. So with Epstein and an independent congressional commission, we can get to the heart of this. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. It's very simple. Epstein justice, we have two objectives. We want to know why 4 presidential administrations have covered up child sex trafficking. And we want the perpetrators to be prosecuted. Very simple. We have just 2 simple objectives, and not easy, but simple. And we can get Americans behind that, because our leaders have done a masterful job at polarizing the right and the left. People on the right think the left is crazy. People on the left think the right is crazy. And I think that this is the one issue that can bring the right and the left together, that children shouldn't be abused with impunity and that the government shouldn't cover up child trafficking. I think that is probably the only issue that can bring the right and left together.
Mm-hmm. And now, final question I'd kind of like to ask you, essentially your prospects in the future with all this. I think you kind of struck at something with essentially the idea of kind of a lot of these different legal actions. Essentially, if you're looking at specifically legally, or what legislation come out of it, a lot of these may be somewhat for naught, at least from that aspect. But so far as the information that we're getting out of there, I think a lot of people are coming to realize what, kind of seeing the government through a whole new different light, a very, very, very different light. And I think that's going to have its effects. And while obviously I want justice for these children, but sometimes we may have to have some sort of realism, or what is the best we can get out of it. And while I know a lot of people, may poo-poo bringing awareness, but to some extent, bringing awareness is how we prevent this from happening in the future. And also, if there is any hope whatsoever at getting any sort of justice for these individuals, it would be through this. And so I think some of the spectacle of all this, the that, maybe X legislation may not go through, but the very fact that you have people chattering about, oh my God, look at this birthday book, look at this, I think it makes a difference. So I kind of want to tie that into your thoughts in the future, and it sounds like you have some thoughts on that as well.
I disagree that awareness will help. We already have awareness. We look at our awareness of the Catholic Church. Look at our awareness of the Boy Scouts. Look at our awareness of Penn State and who knows how many institutions. We need to stop this now. This is going to be the best chance in our lifetimes and maybe ever to stop. If you cover up a crime, you're aiding and abetting that crime. So our government is aiding and abetting child trafficking. And this will be the best opportunity, definitely in our lifetime, and maybe ever, to stop the government from aiding and abetting child trafficking. And there's been a lot of networks that have been protected over the years. I wrote about one, Epstein's another one. People contact me all the time talking about how they were trafficked in protected networks. And it's kind of heartbreaking for me because I'm one guy, I'm one investigator, I'm one journalist, and it's almost impossible for me. It is impossible for me to look into all the allegations that come my way. But I really believe that this is something that we have to do now. We already have awareness, and awareness is, without action, isn't going to help us. Now it's time. We have awareness, and we've had awareness of child abuse being covered up for decades. Now it's time for us to act. We need to act.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, Nick. I'll respect your time, let you get out of here. I'd very much like to pick your brain for a whole lot longer. We'll be sure to do that again at some point, maybe for some other topic. But I appreciate you joining us again today. Nick, you want to let people know where they can find you at? Any final thoughts, and then we'll get you out of here.
I would suggest that you check out EpsteinJustice.com, and you can join our organization. We have monthly webinars, and actually people are coming together by states. We've got people in various states that are going to be facilitators. And Epstein Justice is a grassroots movement, and that's what it's going to take, is a grassroots movement. And we're starting to get some momentum. We're growing. The labor rights movement in the early 1900s was not an easy fight. There were children working for next to nothing in coal mines, and people being taken advantage of in unbelievable ways. Unions came out of that. Workers' rights came out of that. It was a battle, but it happened. The civil rights, that was started out as a grassroots movement, and it was a battle, but we ultimately succeeded. Women's rights, again, another battle, but we ultimately succeeded. So it's us. This is the next social movement, is American children should not be molested. And we're never going to be able to prevent all American children from being molested, but we can definitely make sure that the government never protects child molesters again. We can do that. That's definitely possible. And so I say to your audience to come to EpsteinJustice.com and check us out and sign up for our monthly webinars. We have a webinar coming up, I believe, on the 23rd this month. And we invite everyone, and we hope that you'll join us as we trudge this path to a better future.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for joining us, Nick. There is no higher calling, or I struggle to think of one, than protecting children. So I appreciate you in that endeavor, and I'll try to do the same where I can. For those who want to support what I'm doing over here, leave a like, share, subscribe, comment, leave a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. You can follow this show on Twitter or at Tower Gang Jose. I'm also on YouTube, also on Rumble. You can find me anywhere you find podcasts at. And for those who want to support me the best way you can with money, you can do that over at patreon.com/NoWayJose2020. Usually give you about 1 to 2 paywalled episodes a week. This one, for example, this one will probably go out early. You also get access to the ad-free RSS feed, also get access to Telegram, you get access to pre-show, post-show, and video calls from me and Austin's weekly live call-in show, Already Dead. Also give a big shout-out to my sponsors as a big thank you for everything they do. I have my previous co-hosts on Tower Gang, at Learn to Toad, also at Brigade Deeds, at ZOVRCK, at _Invisiel, Tim Tuttle, at John Cleeple, Will Bell's Delicious Blueberry Rabbit Eye Wine. Big fan of the show, Torin May, at Wayne Taculus, Yellow Polka Dot Dress, and Mark Vestibule. And with that, guys, we're going to get out of here. Appreciate you coming, Nick. I'm surprised you stuck around for the plugs. They are a little bit lengthy, but thanks for sticking around. We'll see you guys on the next one. We're out of here.
Have a good night, Jose.
All right, you too.